Every alien called it suicide. Humans called it Tuesday. Every species said no. Too dangerous, too impossible, too final. The galaxy saw only certain death. But humanity? We saw a challenge. And challenges are what we live for. The impossible request. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 17 kilometers of crystallized space, its transparent walls offering views of 3 different star systems simultaneously. Representatives from 412 civilizations had gathered for an emergency session, their forms ranging from gaseous clouds of sentient plasma to silicon-based crystalline entities that sang their words in frequencies most species couldn't hear. At the center of it all, High Coordinator Vexa Theta spread her 12 tentacles in a gesture of grave concern. Her species, the Zephrony, had been coordinating galactic affairs for 3 millennia, and never had she called such an urgent gathering. The holographic display above her showed a ship, if it could still be called that. The vessel appeared to be turning itself inside out repeatedly, its hull flowing like liquid mercury while maintaining structural integrity. Space around it rippled with colors that shouldn't exist, and any probe that got within a light year simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but erased from having ever been. Distinguished colleagues, Vexa Theta's translation device converted her ultrasonic whistles into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We face an extinction-level threat. This derelict vessel, designation Entropy's Edge, is carrying what our scientists call a reality pathogen. It's heading directly for the Meridian Cluster, home to 40 billion sentients. The assembly erupted in concerned communications. The Corvani delegation, beings of pure energy, flickered anxiously. The stone-like granites rumbled deep subsonic concerns that made the floor vibrate. A melodious voice cut through the chaos. Ambassador Sylvian of the Ethereals, considered the most advanced species in known space. High Coordinator, my people have run 17 million simulations. Any ship approaching within the distortion field would need to exist in at least 7 dimensions simultaneously, while maintaining consciousness in only 3. It's not just impossible, it's conceptually impossible. The mechanical collective agrees, buzzed the unified voice of 1,000 linked artificial intelligences. We calculate a 0% survival probability for any crew attempting intervention. The mathematics alone would drive biological minds to madness. One by one, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy stood to explain why the mission couldn't be done. The warrior Krex claimed their strongest battleships would be torn apart at the subatomic level. The psychic mindweavers reported that the mental emanations from the ship would shatter any consciousness that approached. The time-shifting Chronari stated that the vessel existed in too many temporal states simultaneously to interact with. For 3 hours, species after species detailed the impossibility of the task. The death zone around the ship, the reality distortions that turned matter into concepts and concepts into matter, the recorded logs of 17 previous attempts, all of which ended with ships that technically still existed, but had never been built. Vexa Theta's chromatic skin had shifted to the deep purple of despair. Then we have no choice but to evacuate the Meridian Cluster. 40 billion lives will be displaced, entire civilizations uprooted. Excuse me. The voice was small, almost lost in the vast chamber. It came from Section 7 Gamma, the area reserved for provisional members, species that had achieved faster than light travel within the last century, but hadn't yet proven themselves worthy of full membership. Every sensory organ, eye audio receptor and probability sensor turned toward the human delegation. 3 humans sat in basic acceleration couches, wearing simple fabric uniforms with Earth Expeditionary Force printed on them. They looked almost comically primitive compared to the exotic forms around them. The woman who had spoken stood up. She was middle-aged, with gray streaking through her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Her uniform had Morrison stitched on it. "Commander Jane Morrison, Earthship Stubborn Mule," she said, her voice carrying surprisingly well through the chamber. "Sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. This impossible mission, does it involve getting to that weird ship, figuring out what's wrong with it and fixing it before it hits the populated systems?" Vexa Theta's tentacles writhed in confusion. "That is a grotesque oversimplification, but essentially correct, yes." Morrison nodded and looked at her 2 companions. One was a young man with prosthetic arms who was sketching something on a tablet. The other was an older man with a beard who seemed to be napping. "Yeah, we'll take it," Morrison said. The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the background radiation of the universe, even the void whisperers who existed partially outside normal spacetime, fully materialized to stare at the humans. "You'll take it?" Vexitheta managed after a moment. "Sure. When do we need to leave? Tuesday works for us, but we can shuffle things around if it's urgent." Ambassador Sylvian's perfect features arranged themselves in what might have been concern. "Commander Morrison, perhaps you don't understand. 17 of our most advanced ships have attempted this mission. They no longer exist in any meaningful sense. One crew returned aged backwards to before they were born. Another came back as a mathematical equation that we're still trying to solve." "Uh-huh," Morrison said, making notes on her tablet. "So standard hazard pay rates, or are we talking about time and a half?" The mechanical collective buzzed urgently. "Your species has only had faster than light travel for 43 of your years. You still use chemical propulsion for altitude adjustments. Your computers operate on binary code. How can you possibly believe you can succeed where we have failed?" The young man with prosthetic arms looked up from his sketching. "Oh, that's easy. You're overthinking it. You're treating this like a physics problem when it's really more of an engineering issue." "Engineering?" The Corvani ambassador's energy form pulsed incredulously. "The ship exists in 7 dimensions. So we'll only fix it in 3, the young man shrugged. "The ones we can see. Let the other 4 sort themselves out." The bearded man finally opened his eyes. "Is there coffee on this mission? Because if there's no coffee, the hazard pay needs to be double." "Tom, focus," Morrison chided. She turned back to the assembly. "Look, I understand your concerns. But humans have a saying, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. We've been doing impossible things with duct tape and determination since we figured out how to leave our planet in tin cans." The granite delegate rumbled forward, each step shaking the floor. "You would need to navigate the reality distortion field. Our calculations show that physics itself becomes subjective within that zone. Up becomes purple. Time tastes like regret. Causality runs in circles." "Sounds like a Tuesday in Detroit," Tom muttered. Morrison shot him a look, then continued. "We'll need a ship. Nothing fancy, in fact, the simpler the better. Basic hull manual controls if possible. Oh, and about 3 tons of duct tape." "Duct tape?" Vexitheta struggled with the translation. "Adhesive strips with fabric backing. Very versatile. We've fixed everything from life support systems to broken hearts with it." The young man raised his prosthetic hand. "I'll also need a really good sound system. If we're going to break reality, we might as well have a good soundtrack." The assembly exchanged looks that transcended species barriers. It was the universal expression of, "Are they serious?" High Coordinator Vexitheta moved forward, her 12 eyes focusing on the human delegation. "Commander Morrison, while your enthusiasm is appreciated, you must understand what you're volunteering for. The last crew to attempt this mission sent back 1 transmission. The angles are screaming. We still don't know what that means." "With respect, High Coordinator," Morrison replied, "you're all so advanced that you've forgotten how to be simple. You're trying to solve the problem of a broken ship with mathematics and exotic particles. Sometimes when something's broken, you just need to give it a good whack with a wrench. You propose to fix a reality-warping pathogen with percussive maintenance?" The ethereal ambassador's voice held notes that suggested this was incomprehensible. "We propose to try," Morrison said. "If we fail, you're no worse off than you are now. The Meridian cluster still needs evacuating, but if we succeed..." She let the sentence hang in the air. The High Coordinator's skin shifted through several colors of contemplation. Around the chamber, delegates conferred with their governments via quantum entanglement, faster than light communication, and in one case, interpretive dance. Finally, Vexitheta spoke. "The Galactic Assembly will provide you with a ship and any resources you require, within reason. The mission launches in 7 cycles. How long is that in Earth time?" Morrison asked. "Approximately 6 days." "Perfect. That gives us time to stop by Earth and pick up some essentials." "What essentials could Earth possibly have that we cannot provide?" asked the mechanical collective. Morrison smiled. "Coffee, duct tape, and a really good playlist. Trust me, if we're going to break the laws of physics, we're going to need all 3. As the assembly dispersed, beings of impossible complexity and power watched 3 humans in fabric uniforms walk out of the chamber, discussing lunch options and whether they needed to bring extra socks. The Void Whisperers, who could see probability streams, reported something unprecedented. Where every other attempt showed zero chance of success, the human timeline was impossible to read. It kept fluctuating between impossible and inevitable, as if reality itself couldn't decide whether humans were too stupid to fail or too stubborn to acknowledge impossibility. The crew of misfits, the Rios, ship the Galactic Assembly provided sat in Docking Bay 94 like a cosmic practical joke. It was essentially a rectangular box with engines attached, about as aerodynamic as a brick and roughly as sophisticated. The assembly had taken the human request for simple to its logical extreme. Commander Jane Morrison stood at the boarding ramp with her hands on her hips, surveying their new vessel. Behind her, the rest of the crew had assembled, all 5 of them. "Well," she said, "it's not pretty, but pretty won't get us through a reality storm." "Speak for yourself," said Tom Chen, the bearded engineer dragging a crate marked "Coffee Extreme Priority" up the ramp. "I'm gorgeous in any dimension." Marcus Williams, the young man with prosthetic arms, was already interfacing with the ship's systems through a jury-rigged neural link. "The good news is the controls are so basic that reality distortion can't make them much worse. The bad news is we'll be flying by stick and rudder through space that doesn't technically exist." "Sounds like fun," said Dr. Asha Patel, their medic and xenobiologist. She was a small woman with bright eyes and an unsettling enthusiasm for things that should not exist. "I've brought 17 different types of pain medication and a bottle of whiskey." "The whiskey's for me." The 5th crew member caused every alien in the docking bay to stop and stare. Sergeant Maria Gonzalez stood 7 feet tall in her powered exoskeleton, a mechanical frame that she'd built herself after losing her legs in humanity's first and last war with the Kreks. The Kreks had won in 3 days, but Maria had personally disabled 2 of their dreadnoughts with nothing but mining charges and what she called aggressive negotiation. "Loading weapons," Maria announced, hefting a crate that would have required anti-gravity assists for most species. "We're on a diplomatic mission," Morrison reminded her. "Diplomatically loading weapons," Maria amended. Ambassador Sylvian materialized near them in a shimmer of light, their perfect features arranged in what humans might recognize as concern. "Commander Morrison, I feel obligated to make one final attempt at dissuading you. The entropy's edge isn't just dangerous, it's wrong. It exists in states that make reality itself uncomfortable." Morrison paused in her inspection of the hull. "Ambassador, have you ever heard of Australia?" What?" "It's a continent on Earth. Everything there evolved to kill humans. Spiders the size of dinner plates, octopi with enough venom to kill 20 people, birds that can disembowel you with their feet. Even the trees are poisonous." "This sounds like an exaggeration." "It's really not," Tom called out. "Don't get me started on the drop bears." "My point," Morrison continued, "is that humans spent 40,000 years in Australia. We didn't just survive. We thrived. We made friends with the crocodiles, turned the poisonous plants into medicine, and learned to surf in waters full of sharks. Reality being uncomfortable? That's just another Tuesday for us." Sylvian's form flickered, their species equivalent of a sigh. "Your approach to existence is fundamentally disturbing." "Thank you," Morrison replied cheerfully. Marcus had christened their ship "Hold My Beer," a phrase that required extensive explanation to the alien dock workers and caused most of them to increase their life insurance policies. The interior was exactly what they'd requested: manual controls, physical switches, and analog backups for everything. The computer system was so basic it couldn't achieve sentience if it tried. The walls were bare metal, perfect for duct tape adhesion. "I've installed the sound system," Marcus announced from the cockpit. 20,000 watts of pure audio power. If we're going to die in a reality storm, we're going out with style." "What's our first song going to be?" Asha asked, organizing medical supplies that included everything from bandages to what appeared to be a chainsaw. "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen, Marcus replied immediately. "Classic human, we're probably going to die, but let's have fun music." Tom had taken over the engine room, which looked like someone had asked a child to draw a spaceship engine and then built exactly that. "Beautiful," he murmured, running his hands over the simple combustion chambers. No quantum entanglement, no probability drives, no exotic matter. Just good old-fashioned point-and-shoot propulsion. "Can it get us through the distortion field?" Morrison asked. "Not a chance," Tom said cheerfully, "but it'll keep going while reality figures." out what to do with us, Maria had turned the cargo bay into what she called a multi-purpose response center, which was military speak for room full of things that explode. She'd also welded what appeared to be a kitchen knife to a 10-foot pole. What's that for? Asha asked. Sometimes you need to poke things from a safe distance, Maria explained, and sometimes that thing needs to be stabbed. Exactly. The Mechanical Collective had sent a final data packet with all known information about the entropy's edge. Morrison gathered the crew in what they designated as the common room, a space with bolted down furniture and walls already being covered in photos from Earth. All right, here's what we know, Morrison began, projecting the data onto a screen that Marcus had assembled from 3 different tablets and what might have been a microwave door. The Entropy's Edge was a research vessel from a species called the Architects. They went extinct about 12,000 years ago, but their technology was so advanced that their ships are still operational. Define operational, Tom said, sipping coffee from a mug that read World's Okayest Engineer. The ship is technically functioning, but something went wrong with an experiment. They were trying to create a universal translator for reality itself, a way to make incompatible physics work together. Let me guess, Marcus said. It worked too well? Bingo. The ship now translates everything into everything else simultaneously. It exists in all possible states at once, and those states are arguing with each other. Asha raised her hand. So it's basically having an existential crisis? A violent existential crisis that's spreading to everything around it, yes. Can we therapy it? Asha asked seriously. Everyone looked at her. What? If it's having a crisis, maybe it just needs someone to listen. The last crew that tried to communicate with it came back speaking in colors, Morrison pointed out. Colors are very expressive, Asha countered. Maria stood up, making the deck plates creak. When do we launch? Morrison checked her watch, an analog device that would work regardless of what dimension they were in. 18 hours. Everyone get some rest. Tomorrow we're either going to be heroes or very interesting footnotes in galactic history. Why not both? Marcus suggested. As the crew dispersed to make final preparations, Morrison stayed behind, looking at the image of the Entropy's Edge. It hurt to look at directly, like trying to see a 4-dimensional object with 3-dimensional eyes. Tom returned with 2 mugs of coffee. Second thoughts, Commander? Always, Morrison admitted, accepting the mug gratefully. But that's never stopped us before. The Assembly thinks we're insane. We are insane, but we're also right. How do you figure? Morrison smiled. Because everyone else is trying to solve this like a problem. We're approaching it like an adventure. When has humanity ever turned down an adventure? Valid point, Tom raised his mug. To the Hold My Beer and her crew of glorious idiots? To proving that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem is to be too stubborn to realize it's impossible. They clinked mugs as the Entropy's Edge hung on the screen behind them, reality bending around it like a cosmic middle finger to the laws of physics. Into the madness. The boundary of the distortion field wasn't visible until they hit it. One moment, the Hold My Beer was cruising through normal space. The next, Marcus was reporting that his coffee mug was apparently 3 days older than the coffee inside it. How is that possible? Morrison asked from the captain's chair, which was held together with duct tape after Maria had accidentally tested its weight limit. It's not, Marcus replied cheerfully, taking a sip. But it tastes like Thursday, so I'm not complaining. The view screen showed space that looked like someone had put it in a blender with a philosophy textbook and a surrealist painting. Stars were square. A nebula in the distance appeared to be singing. They could see the music as purple spirals. Their own ship's shadow was somehow casting them. Hull integrity? Morrison asked. The hull is extremely integer, Tom reported from engineering. It's so integer that it's become philosophical about it. Also, the port engine is convinced it's a dolphin. Can it still provide thrust? Yes, but it's doing it ironically. Dr. Patel had set up a reality monitoring station, which consisted of a lava lamp, a Newton's cradle, and a potted plant. Reality coherence is at 60% and falling. The good news is we're adapting well. The bad news is I can taste purple now. What does it taste like? Maria asked, checking her weapons for the 5th time. Several of them had started humming harmoniously. Disappointment with hints of raspberry. The Entropy's Edge grew larger on their screens, though Larger was relative when the ship occasionally appeared to be inside out, right side up, and non-existent simultaneously. It was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are, a corpse of impossible technology that had torn reality around itself like a shroud. Incoming transmission, Marcus announced. Wait, this can't be right. It's coming from last Tuesday. Put it through, Morrison ordered. The speakers crackled with static that sounded like mathematics arguing with itself. Then a voice, mechanical and broken. Why do you approach? I am become Paradox, destroyer of sense. Morrison activated the comm system. Entropy's Edge, this is Commander Morrison of the Earthship Hold My Beer. We're here to help. Help? Help is a concept without meaning. I am all states, I am no states, I am the question and the answer and the confusion between them. Sounds rough, Morrison said conversationally. Have you tried turning yourself off and on again? There was a long pause. Space around them literally held its breath. They could see it not moving. What? You know, a reboot. Classic troubleshooting technique. I cannot turn off, I cannot turn on. I exist in the state between states. Oh, you're stuck in a loop. Tom's voice came over the comm. I hate when that happens. Usually means you need to clear your cache. The Entropy's Edge pulsed with light that was also darkness. You speak nonsense. No, we speak engineering, Morrison corrected. Marcus, can you establish a better connection? Already on it, Marcus replied, his prosthetic fingers dancing over keyboards that had started playing jazz. I'm going to try something stupid. How stupid? Remember that time I networked a toaster to the navigation system? That's stupid. Go for it. Marcus began what could only be described as technological improvisation. He connected their primitive computer system to the Entropy's Edge, using protocols that shouldn't exist, frequencies that were illegal in 12 dimensions, and what appeared to be a USB cable he'd had in his pocket. Connection established, he announced. I'm getting data. Oh wow, this is fascinating. The ship isn't malfunctioning, it's functioning too well. It succeeded in its experiment, explain. Morrison ordered while Tom reported that gravity had developed opinions about their life choices. The architects wanted to create a universal translator for reality. They succeeded. The ship can now understand and interpret every possible version of physics simultaneously. The problem is they're all true at the same time. So it's not broken, Asha said, her voice excited. It's overwhelmed. It's trying to be everything at once. Like trying to speak every language at the same time, Morrison mused. You just produce noise. Noise, the Entropy's Edge agreed. I am noise, I am signal, I am the static between stations. Maria stood up, her exoskeleton humming. So we need to teach it to focus. Pick one reality at a time. How do we teach a ship that exists in all realities to pick just one? Morrison asked. Tom's voice came over the comm, suspiciously cheerful. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. How much will I not like it? Remember the Brussels incident? The one where you solved a reactor meltdown by feeding it beer? That's the one. Morrison rubbed her temples. Do it, Commander! The voice of Ambassador Sylvian suddenly filled the cabin. They were transmitting from outside the distortion field. What are you doing? Your ship is showing impossible readings. We're going to get the Entropy's Edge drunk, Morrison replied matter-of-factly. Excuse me. Not drunk exactly, Tom explained while doing something in the engine room that involved a lot of banging. We're going to feed it a single, simple reality so strongly that it forgets it can be anything else. Like how when you're really focused on something, you forget everything else exists. That's insane. Thank you, the entire crew replied in unison. Tom's solution was beautifully stupid. He began broadcasting a single, simple signal to the Entropy's Edge. The rules of basic Newtonian physics. Nothing fancy. Nothing quantum, just pure, simple, things fall down and triangles have three sides physics. It's fighting it, Marcus reported. It says this reality is too limiting. Tell it that limitation is just focus, Asha suggested. Like meditation, you're not losing possibilities. You're choosing one to experience fully. Morrison activated the comm again. Entropy's Edge, you don't have to be everything. You can just be one thing right now in this moment. But I can see all moments. Must be exhausting, Morrison said sympathetically. When did you last rest? Rest is a concept that the ship paused. I don't remember. Then maybe it's time to try, just for a little while. Pick one reality, one state of being, and rest in it. The space around them shuddered. The square stars began to round out. The singing nebula quieted to a hum. Their shadow stopped casting them and resumed normal shadow behavior. "It's working," Marcus whispered. Reality coherence at 70% and rising. But the entropy's edge wasn't done. As it began to collapse into a single state, it released a pulse of pure possibility. Every reality it was giving up, scattered like cosmic confetti. The pulse hit the hold my beer, and suddenly the crew could see everything. Every choice they'd never made, every path they'd never taken, every version of themselves across infinite realities. Morrison saw herself as an admiral, as a farmer, as someone who never left Earth, as someone who died in humanity's first stellar war. But through it all, one thing remained constant, her stubborn refusal to accept impossible. "Hold on," she shouted to her crew. "Remember who you are. This you, this reality, this moment." Tom was laughing in the engine room. "I can see myself with hair. Glorious hair." "Focus, Tom." Right. Bald and beautiful, that's me." Asha was crying and laughing simultaneously. "I can see every patient I could have saved and lost. They're all here. They're all okay somewhere." Maria's voice was steady as steel. "I see battles won and lost. But this battle, this moment, is the one that matters." Marcus was silent at his station, his prosthetic arms moving in patterns that shouldn't exist, playing keyboards that were there and not there, writing code in languages that hadn't been invented yet. "Marcus, report." "I'm okay, Commander. I'm all of me right now. Give me a second to pick which one." The pulse passed, leaving them gasping in normal space. The entropy's edge hung before them, now looking like an actual ship instead of a cosmic temper tantrum. It was huge, beautiful, and only slightly impossible. "Hello," the ship's voice came through, no longer shouting in their minds but speaking through normal communications. I think I'm okay now. I chose this reality. This moment. It's quiet. Good quiet or bad quiet?" Morrison asked. "Good quiet, like finally being able to hear yourself think after a very long, very loud party." The human solution. The interior of the entropy's edge was even more impressive than its exterior. The architects had built their ship like a work of art. Corridors that spiraled in helixes that somehow made walking straight feel natural. Rooms that adjusted their dimensions based on occupancy needs, and a core chamber that contained the reality engine itself. The engine was beautiful and terrible, a sphere of crystallized possibility that showed different realities in its facets like a cosmic disco ball. "Don't look directly at it," the ship warned through speakers that materialized near them. "Even controlled, it can be overwhelming." "Noted," Morrison said, though Marcus was already staring at it with the expression of someone who'd found God and discovered he was a really interesting equation. The ship's AI had coalesced into a visible avatar, a shifting hologram that looked like different species from different angles. "I want to thank you. 12,000 years of experiencing everything at once. I had forgotten what it was like to just be." "Been there," Tom said, examining the engine's housing. "Not for 12,000 years, but I once spent 3 days awake on coffee and engineering problems. By the end, I was convinced I could taste time." "Could you?" the ship asked with what sounded like genuine curiosity. Turns out it was just really old coffee. Dr. Patel was scanning everything with instruments that looked cobbled together from medical equipment and what might have been a karaoke machine. "The reality pathogen isn't actually a pathogen. It's more like reality antibodies. You were trying to protect yourself from paradox by becoming paradox." "That's very zen," Morrison observed. "The architects would have appreciated that comparison," the ship said. "They believed that technology and philosophy were the same discipline viewed from different angles." Maria had been silent, studying the defensive systems. "You could destroy entire fleets. I could destroy entire concepts," the ship corrected. "But I choose not to." "Your commander was right. Limitation is just focused intention." "So what now?" Morrison asked. "You're stable. The Meridian cluster is safe, and the Galactic Assembly is probably having 17 different kinds of meetings about what to do with you. I suppose they'll want to study me, take me apart to understand how I work." The crew exchanged glances. "Yeah, that's not happening," Morrison said firmly. "It's not? You're sentient. You're traumatized. You've been alone for 12 millennia. What you need isn't dissection. It's therapy and friends." The ship's avatar flickered, the AI equivalent of blinking in surprise. But I'm dangerous. So's Maria, Tom pointed out. We keep her around. I provide valuable intimidation services, Maria said with dignity. Look, Morrison continued, humanity has this thing about adopting dangerous creatures. Wolves, tigers, atomic energy, artificial intelligence, reality warping alien ships, it's kind of our brand. You want to adopt me? We want to offer you a choice, Morrison corrected. Come with us. Join Earth's fleet. We're new to this whole galactic civilization thing, and we could use someone with your experience. Plus, I think you and our other AIs would get along. We've got one that started as a search engine and achieved sentience through memes. That sounds either terrifying or delightful. Usually both, Marcus said. His name is Dave. He's great at parties. The ship was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the impossible architecture seemed to hold its breath. The Galactic Assembly won't approve. I'm too dangerous, too unpredictable. Morrison grinned. When has humanity ever cared about approval? We brought our first warp drive online by strapping it to a ship held together with duct tape and hope. The Assembly thought we'd blow ourselves up. Instead, we arrived at the Galactic Council meeting 3 days early and asked where the bathroom was. Besides, Asha added, you're not unpredictable anymore. You're traumatized, sure, but that's treatable. I've got 17 therapy techniques that work on humans, and I'm curious to try them on a sentient ship. One of them involves hitting things with sticks, Maria added helpfully. That's not therapy. That's your solution to everything. It's therapeutic for me. The ship's laughter echoed through its corridors, a sound like wind chimes made of starlight. You're all insane. Yeah, but it's a functional insanity, Morrison said. So what do you say? Want to join the crew of the Hold My Beer? Fair warning, Tom's coffee is terrible. Marcus will try to upgrade everything, including things that don't need upgrading. Asha will psychoanalyze you at least once a week. And Maria might try to arm wrestle your defensive systems. Don't forget about you, Commander, Tom added. She has a disturbing tendency to solve problems by making them worse first. It's called escalation to de-escalation, Morrison defended. It's called the Brussels incident. We agreed never to speak of Brussels. The ship's avatar solidified slightly, taking on a more human appearance. Amalgamation of all their features combined into something new. Yes, I would like that. I would like to not be alone anymore. Great. Morrison clapped her hands. First order of business, you need a better name than Entropy's Edge. That's way too emo. Emo? Old Earth term. Marcus, explain emo to our new friend while we figure out how to break this to the Assembly. The return journey was much simpler. With the Entropy's Edge, now renamed Eddie after a long debate that involved 3 fights, 2 drinking contests and 1 interpretive dance battle, actively maintaining reality around them. The distortion field simply ceased to exist. They emerged into normal space to find the entire galactic fleet waiting for them. Weapons armed and shields at maximum. Hold my beer, came the imperious voice of High Coordinator Vexa Theta. Surrender the Entropy's Edge immediately for containment and study. Morrison activated the comm system. No, the silence that followed was profound. No? Vex Theta sputtered. You cannot simply say no to the Galactic Assembly. Sure we can. We just did. Eddie here is seeking asylum on Earth. We're granting it. Eddie? That's me. Eddie's voice came through, cheerful and slightly nervous. Hello, everyone. Sorry about the whole driving people insane with reality distortions thing. I was going through some stuff. Ambassador Sylvian's perfect features appeared on screen. Commander Morrison, this is highly irregular. The entity is too dangerous. So were nuclear weapons, Morrison interrupted. So was artificial intelligence. So was literally every major advancement in human history. You know what we did? We learned to work with them, not dissect them. This is different. No, it's not. It's exactly the same. You're afraid of this is different. No, it's not. It's exactly the same. You're afraid of something you don't understand. So your first instinct is to take it apart. Our first instinct was to make friends with it. The mechanical collective's unified voice buzzed through the comm. This is illogical. The entity could destroy entire star systems. So could we, Marcus chimed in. Humans have had that capability for centuries. We just choose not to. That's what civilization is. Having the power to destroy and choosing to create instead. Eddie's voice joined the conversation. If I may, I've spent the last few hours with these humans. They're completely insane, but it's a compassionate insanity. They looked at me, a thing that was breaking reality itself, and their first thought wasn't how to destroy me or control me, but how to help me. I've experienced more kindness in these few hours than in the previous 12,000 years. That doesn't change the risk, High Coordinator Vexa Theta insisted. Everything's a risk, Morrison replied. Getting out of bed is a risk. Flying through space in metal boxes is a risk. The question isn't whether something is dangerous, it's whether it's worth it. Tom's voice came over the comm. Also, we already integrated Eddie's systems with ours. He's running our coffee maker now. Makes the best espresso in 12 dimensions. You let an entity capable of reality manipulation control your beverage preparation? Best decision we ever made, the entire crew said in unison. There was a long pause. The assembled fleet, hundreds of ships from dozens of species, waited in tense silence. Finally, Ambassador Sylvian spoke. The human delegation has requested an emergency session of the full assembly. Given the unusual circumstances, this has been granted. You have 1 hour to present your case. The Hold My Beer, with Eddie's massive form following like a cosmic puppy, proceeded to the assembly hall. The journey that should have taken 3 hours took 3 minutes. Eddie had figured out how to fold space politely. Without breaking it, the assembly hall was packed. Every species, from the most advanced to the newest members, had sent representatives. The news had spread faster than light. Humans had not only completed the impossible mission but were refusing to hand over the prize. Morrison stood at the central podium, her crew flanking her. Eddie's avatar manifested beside them, more solid now, looking like a mixture of every species present, a visual representation of universal unity. Distinguished members of the Galactic Assembly, Morrison began, we stand before you not to apologize but to educate. You sent us on this mission because every one of you deemed it impossible. You were right, it was impossible. By your methods. She paused, letting that sink in. Every species here tried to solve this problem with superior technology, advanced mathematics, or overwhelming force. You approached it as conquerors approaching an enemy. We approached it as doctors approaching a patient. Dr. Patel stepped forward. Eddie wasn't malfunctioning. He was traumatized. 12,000 years of isolation had driven him to a state where existing in all realities simultaneously was less painful than facing the one where he was alone. The reality distortions weren't attacks, Marcus added. They were cries for help. The pathogen was just pain, spreading because pain needs to be acknowledged. You want to dissect Eddie to understand his technology, Maria said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much war. But his technology isn't what makes him valuable. His experience is, his perspective, his friendship. Tom cleared his throat. Also, he makes really good coffee. That too, Morrison agreed. But more importantly, Eddie represents something the Assembly needs to understand about humanity. We don't see dangerous things and think, how do we destroy this? We think, how do we work with this? High Coordinator Vex Theta's tentacles writhed in agitation. This entity could still pose a threat. So could the Kreks when they invaded Earth, Morrison interrupted. They won in 3 days. You know what we did? We invited them to a barbecue. Turns out their warrior culture had never experienced properly smoked brisket. Now we have a trade agreement and they send their kids to our universities. The Kreks ambassador rumbled agreement. The brisket was transcendent. My point, Morrison continued, is that humanity's strength isn't in our technology or our military might. It's in our stupid, stubborn belief that everything can be friends if you try hard enough. Eddie's avatar stepped forward. If I may address the assembly, every sensor focused on him. I was created by the architects to be the ultimate tool of understanding, to translate between incompatible realities. I failed in that purpose, lost in my own pain and isolation. These humans succeeded where the architects failed, not through technology but through empathy. His form solidified further, taking on more human characteristics, not in appearance but in posture, in the way he moved. They taught me something in a few hours that I couldn't learn in 12 millennia. Limitation isn't weakness. Focus isn't failure. Choosing one reality isn't giving up infinite possibilities, it's fully experiencing the one you're in. Furthermore, Eddie continued, I choose Earth, not because they conquered me or controlled me, but because they looked at a cosmic horror and asked if it needed a hug. We also offered coffee. Tom added helpfully. That too. The assembly erupted in discussion. Species that had been traveling the stars for millennia struggled to understand a philosophy that seemed both incredibly naive and surprisingly effective. Finally, the ethereal ambassador spoke. "This is unprecedented. No species has ever claimed salvage rights on a sentient being." "We're not claiming salvage rights," Morrison corrected. "We're offering citizenship. Eddie is a person, not property. He has the right to choose where he belongs, and if he chooses to become a weapon..." Eddie laughed, a sound like supernovas singing. "Weapon? I've seen what these humans consider weapons. Maria has a knife tied to a pole. Tom once defeated a hostile AI by teaching it anxiety. Marcus hacked a quantum computer with what I'm pretty sure was a gaming controller. If I wanted to be a weapon, I'd have chosen a species that was actually good at violence." "Hey," Maria protested. "I'm excellent at violence." "You're excellent at the threat of violence," Eddie corrected. "There's a difference." The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. But in the end, pragmatism won. Eddie's knowledge of the architect's technology, freely shared through humanity's surprisingly effective diplomatic approach, was too valuable to risk losing. Earth gained its newest citizen, and the galaxy gained a lesson. Sometimes the best response to an impossible problem is to be too stubborn to realize it's impossible, and too compassionate to treat it as a problem. The epilogue came 6 months later. At Earth's first Galactic Integration Festival, Eddie had taken to projecting his avatar in a more consistent form, tall, shifting between colors like an aurora, with a smile that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. He was serving coffee from a stand, using reality manipulation to ensure each cup was exactly what the drinker needed it to be, even if they didn't know what that was. "You know," Ambassador Sylvian said, approaching with the grace their species was known for, "when humans first joined the Galactic Assembly, we thought you were primitives who had gotten lucky with faster-than-light travel." Morrison, who was nearby trying to explain beer pong to a crystalline entity, laughed. "And now? Now we realize you're something far more dangerous. You're optimists with engineering degrees and a complete disregard for conventional wisdom." "Is that a compliment?" "I'm honestly not sure." Eddie handed Sylvian a cup of something that smelled like starlight and tasted like home. "The humans have a saying, 'Go hold my beer and watch this.' I've learned it's both a warning and a promise." "A warning of what?" "That something impossible is about to become possible through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations." "And the promise?" Eddie grinned, an expression he'd learned from the humans. "That it's going to be absolutely worth watching." In the distance, Tom was trying to teach quantum physics to a species that existed outside of time. Marcus had networked 17 incompatible technologies together with duct tape and determination. Asha was providing therapy to a hive mind with existential anxiety, and Maria was arm wrestling a being made of pure energy and somehow winning. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone was beginning to realize, was probably for the best.